YouTube users. Welcome to the latest edition of the Doc's College Basketball News. Picks, predictions, and the works. He's Scott Spreitzer. I'm Doug Upstone, and we're here to talk about college basketball betting tips for this coming weekend. Now, we missed last week's show, had some things going on that prevented us from doing it, but as far as Scott and I can tell, we are locked in right through the end of March. We're going to talk about 5 key college basketball games going on this weekend that lead us up to March Madness. And Scott, can you believe that 4 weeks from this Sunday, the bids are coming out?
Goes by so fast, man. I mean, it just seems like we just started this stuff, and now we're going to be, as you mentioned, talking conference tournaments in no time, and of course the big dance. But yeah, Doug, man, it's a situation where, this is the time of year, as you and I have talked many times by text or by phone, that we start looking for, what teams and what type of teams can make a run of the big dance.
That's exactly true. And, along with that, Scott, I know in general with college basketball, you continue to roll and having an excellent season. Why don't you let all the viewers in on what's been going on?
I'm blaming you for my Saturday last week, okay? Because we didn't do the video. I did wear that lucky shirt, but I wore it, I think it was with Robert Ferringo doing a Super Bowl show. And apparently that shirt and Robert Ferringo don't go together. So it's either your fault or Robert's. It certainly is not mine that I had a losing Saturday in college basketball. How could it be my fault, right? So anyway, it was a tough Saturday. It finally happened. And it was one of those situations where we were hoping to avoid that happening, but you knew it was probably overdue. We have bounced back the last couple of days. We had a big play on Wednesday night on the Iowa Hawkeyes, which cashed. Had a big play on Monday on Kansas, which cashed. So it has bounced back, Doug. But this weekend we'll rack it up. We'll do it again. We had back-to-back Saturday sweeps before having a losing Saturday last weekend. And we will have, again, at least 3 college basketball plays. I've earmarked a couple that could be a 6 or 7 star play. And I will say this, Doug, Sunday made up for it because we went 5-0 with the NFL, with the Super Bowl, with the side on Tampa Bay, the total on the under, and then I hit all 3 props. So, little pat on the back there, and you can throw things at me if you wish. But the bottom line is Sunday saved us for the weekend.
There you go. That sounds excellent. Now, myself, Scott, I was having a good season, and then, last week just got me, and when you're doing this for, what do we do in college basketball? Basically, 16 weeks? And, you're going to have those. And
Sure.
What you're just talking about, that happened to me. Same thing, though, this week. I've started to bounce back, got some things going. And I had a big play on Wednesday on Drake, which was a
Nice.
easy blowout winner. And the same thing, I've looked ahead, and there's a couple games that, that are really interesting. And you never know, it might be one of the games we're going to talk about here in just a second. So yeah, and what everybody should also take a look at is that sign up today at Doc Sports, get $60 of free picks. Now, these free picks, these are not just ordinary run-of-the-mill. These are plays that any of the 12 handicappers, including Scott and myself, would put out on a particular day. So the day you sign up, you're going to get premium quality picks. So understand that this is just not some freebie somebody throwing out there that both Scott and I are familiar with, that we've seen at other websites and stuff like that. That's not what happens at Docs. This is the good stuff. That's what you're going to get for your $60 of free money, and then you can decide what you want to do from there. So sign up today. It's clean. It's simple. Sign up for today for Docs, $60 of free picks. All right, Scott, now let's get into some of the action here. And one of the things that you had just brought up previously is talking about the NCAA tournament. And I just wanted to share with the listeners some ideas that you have about in terms of preparation, and then I will do the same. So why don't you lead off?
All right, I got 3 things right off the top of my head: backcourts, backcourts, and backcourts. And if I didn't mention it, backcourts. It's not hard to find adjusted tempos on offense and on defense, and turnover percentage on offense and defense. And make sure, I always say to people when they ask me, to make sure to know which teams keep care of the rock, take care of the rock, and also turn other teams over. That's why I said offensive and defensive turnover percentage. And then, of course, finally, control that tempo. Rarely will I back, Doug, a team in the big dance to win more than one game, if even one game, if they are always playing at the other team's pace. And this doesn't mean that you have to play at an ultra fast pace. You just have to control the pace more often than not. Perfect example of this. Gonzaga owns the 7th fastest adjusted tempo. Baylor is 166th in as far as pace is concerned. But both teams control the tempo throughout a game, almost every game they play, and force others to play their game. Those are the teams that I look at to go deep when it comes to filling out brackets, when it comes to potential futures at the start of the tournament, and again, against the spread to kick things off. I got another one, but I'm going to ask you for one of yours first.
Okay, that's no problem. Now, one of the things I like to do, Scott, and it actually starts this coming Monday, is I like to look at where the teams are performing, and this is particularly for the first round of the tournament. Is what I'm referring to. Is I go get the standings of every team. Okay, in college basketball, just copy and paste it and put it in a file. And then on Selection Sunday, that night, I go through and identify all the teams that have made the tournament and what their record has been the last month. And so what that allows me to do, it allows me to see what teams are performing well coming down the stretch, where they were in their conference at the time, where they finished, and then also their finish in the conference tournament. This used to be, I have to say honestly, this used to be an absolutely killer way to make money in the first round. Now, the books, they're not dumb, and they've not so they figured out what I did, but they understood the premise of underdogs, okay, in that first round, and hot underdogs, and so that it's still quite profitable, just not quite what it used to be, Scott. So yeah. Go ahead, give me another one.
Well, I was just going to say, feeding off of that, the one thing that I always look at is I like to try to stay away from teams that are 50-50 teams when they get into the tournament and maybe won 6 or 7 or covered 6 or 7 games down the stretch going into March Madness and had to win their conference tourney. So let's say they started a winning streak, a spread winning streak at least, a couple of games before their tournament. They won 3 or 4 games in their conference tournament. Now they're on a 6 or 7 game spread win streak. They're only a 50-50 team. If the tournament would have started a month earlier, they would have never been in the big dance. Those teams I like to stay away from or play against. But you're right. I tend to kind of do along the same lines of what you're saying that you do. Another one is know which teams have that elite superstar, that difference maker who can take a team to another level on his shoulders, seemingly alone, when all else fails for his team. And while I prefer it to be a guard or a wing, Luke Garza is a guy for Iowa who comes to mind as a big man, averaging 25 points per game, 8 or 9 boards per game. He can get you 30 when you absolutely need it. Again, though, I do prefer a little bit more of a guard or a traditional wing type of player. You think of guys like Trae Young, that could just pump in 40 whenever needed and create on their own. That's why I tend to look at guards and small forwards more than I do the big men underneath. And that's a team we're going to talk about, Oklahoma, a little bit later. We're going to talk about their Saturday game, Doug, but I'll use them as an example. They're all bunched up between like 10 and 15 points per game. There's nobody on that team, if everything else is failing, who's going to throw down 30, 35 points when it needs to be done. So a team like that, as well coached as they are, and I'm a huge Lon Kruger fan, as well coached as they are, when it gets to a certain point in the tournament, they might hit that ceiling because they don't have that guy to take them to the next level.
Yeah, and to piggyback on what you're saying, and this goes along in looking at the long view of the tournament, there's one thing that is inarguable, with rare exception, of the teams that are in the Final Four, is they have, I'm not saying NBA stars, but they have NBA talent. So you have guards, that can play at that level. They're, typically they end up being 6'3" or taller. You have forwards that end up being 6'7" or taller. And these guys, again, are legitimate NBA players. Now, like I said, they might not be stars. They might only play 2 or 3 years in the NBA, but for the most part, that's who's going to win the NCAA tournament. And that always backs up the point, for example, that Jay Bilas makes. Okay, basically, the best teams win. And so that's kind of the direction that goes. So there's just a couple of tips for you to consider for the NCAA tournament. Scott and I will continue to talk about this along with giving you free picks. But I know what you want to get into. You want to get into the free picks. So let's get at it. Okay, let's talk some Friday action. And we got some good games. And we're going to start with St. Bonaventure's against VCU. And that's going to be on ESPN Friday night. Scott, lead it off.
Yeah, VCU hosting this one. Circa here in Vegas opened VCU a 4-point favorite. It immediately went to 3. action came in on St. Bonnie's right away. Listen, both teams do it with defense. And if, I'll tell you what, you look at Tulane and Tulsa the other night. I'm going to give you an example about teams that do it with defense rather than offense. If I see 6 or 7 points, one team favored over the other, they both play deliberate tempos and both are scoring, 65 points per game, I'll look to take the points. Both teams do play a deliberate style of basketball for the most part, but I think that handicapping factor is thrown out of the mix because that line is only 3 in this game. What worries me about VCU in this one is they're shallow at guard right now. Their guard depth is being knocked around a little bit because of injuries. Got one guy who's out, one guy who's questionable. Highland is their best player, and he is a backcourt player. So he might be able to carry this team a little bit in this game. But again, that depth in the backcourt is going to be tested. Having said that, VCU blew a 14-point lead in the second half of that first meeting. They went 11 of 40, Doug, from inside the three-point line. Their 2-pointers, 11 for 40. You and I could almost do that. They were afforded 11 fewer free throw attempts than was St. Bonnie's. And over the final 18 minutes of that game, St. Bonnie's outscored VCU 41-11. I think they're going to exact a little revenge here talking about Virginia Commonwealth. But again, be a little careful because the backcourt depth is a little bit questionable right now.
Yeah, on this one, actually, I had St. Bonnie's back on that day, and that was one of those that a thank you, was forthcoming because that was a nice one, a lucky one, by the way, I might add too. Yeah, I agree that the teams are fairly similar. St. Bonaventure's caught my eye when they beat Richmond on the second day of 2021. And that kind of was the alarm for me on this team. You could see that their defense was strong. You could see they did a nice job in rebounding, and they're very good at transition offense. Not necessarily just fast break points, but they got the ball before the other team and didn't allow the other team to set up defensively. So from that standpoint, my concern, though, with St. Bonaventure's, they average 5 threes a game. That's it. They're a 2-point shooting team. They don't have anybody from deep. If they, in that instance, they were able to come from behind, but this time this is going to be on the road. And so myself, I'm going to suggest take the Rams. And if you said the -3, that works for me. All right, let's move ahead. This I got to admit, Scott, now you mentioned Oklahoma. This is my favorite game to talk about this week. And there's actually going to be 2 of them, the Loyola Ramblers and the Drake Bulldogs in the Missouri Valley. I'll hold off. My anxiety wants me to go first, but I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. I appreciate it. I'm a huge Mo Valley guy. We're going to talk about a former Mo Valley team in just a bit, and the Creighton Blue Jays are the big game coming up. And I grew up in the Midwest. I was a huge Missouri Valley guy. Real quick story. When I moved to Vegas, I was 17 years old. I grew a beard about 6 months later so I could get into all the sports books and rumor has it, all the clubs. And but anyway, what I was doing is I didn't have a big bankroll back then, obviously. I was a young pup and just going to college and all that kind of stuff. But what I did is I said, well, I'm bringing the Mo Valley with me. And I just focused on the Missouri Valley the entire season. And that's a recommendation for people who maybe don't have the time to handicap all the games and all the conferences with 300 plus teams. Pick a conference, an under the radar conference that you can focus in on throughout the course of the season. You'll give yourself a better chance to make some money and you won't kill your bankroll. So having said all of that, this game, a great story that Drake's been. They've just finally lost their first game of the season not too long ago. I think they have, 17 or 18 wins now. I do have Loyola-Chicago, Doug, power rated quite a bit higher. I've got Loyola-Chicago power rated in my top 20. I've got Drake around 50th in the nation right now. And I think Loyola has a better chance between these two to make a run in the NC2A tournament. The thing that bothers me about Drake is their free throw attempts to field goal attempts ratio. They're one of the worst in college basketball at drawing fouls and getting to the free throw line, yet they commit way too many personal fouls themselves. Then you got Loyola, 6th in effective field goal percentage. If folks haven't been following them, I got the notes. I'm looking at them right now to make sure I get this right. 6th in effective field goal percentage, 3rd in 2-point accuracy. The Ramblers at 60% of their 2-pointers. Boy, it's one of those things that where Drake, all the stats say Loyola, but maybe Drake's got that one left in him after finally losing a game the other day. They don't have Lewis Lloyd. That was 1985, but they've got a great bunch of kids who are well coached.
Yeah, both of these teams, they are extremely well coached, and the numbers just scream. I mean, both teams are in terms of offensive and defensive efficiency, they're both in the top 20 in the country. Okay, so that, they're just not they're not just beating teams, they're beating them effectively, and that's why they're so good against the spread. If memory serves correct, Loyola, the Ramblers are 12-5-1 against the spread. Drake is 14-3. So because of how well they play on both ends of the court, that's where their advantage is. Now, competing head to head, I agree. This Loyola team has taken on some of the same look, at least, of the team that went to the Final Four. I'm not saying Loyola's going back, but I'm telling you what, there's a lot of attributes here to really like about them. Drake, I think the pressure got to him against Valparaiso. I mean, they played 2 lousy games. They played 1 good half, and they're actually able to get a split. But beyond that, I'm not sure. I think what's going to happen, okay, I'm going to just give a small lean on Drake in the opening game and then take Loyola on Sunday, or vice versa. whatever I can get, that's what I'll do the opposite of.
Again, Loyola, as you just said, also, they're the better basketball team. And they have the better chance of going deeper in the postseason in March Madness. But in this particular game, it's like, boy, there's very little margin for error for Loyola, I think, in this first game.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. All right, Oklahoma and West Virginia. You mentioned West Virginia, and you mentioned Oklahoma. Nobody's going to catch Baylor in the Big 12. We know that. That's a good. In fact, nobody might catch them in the country other than Gonzaga. But these two teams are basically fighting for second place here, as opposed to most Bob Huggins teams. This one actually has the ability to shoot and score. That's a little bit different. And when I say that, particularly from the outside, the last 4 to 5 years, their best shot was a missed shot, as they say on television, and just to chase it down and get a rebound and go and put it back up. But they have the ability to score a little bit more in this particular game, or this particular season. And there's Derek Culver, Scott. I mean, every time you watch him, he doesn't always score 20 points. He doesn't always get 10 rebounds, but he's always impacting the game in a positive way for this team. So that's something about this group I really like. It does concern me. They do go through scoring droughts, so that does bother me. But they lost the previous game at Norman, 75-71 comes to mind as 1.5 point underdogs. I'm looking at, like I said, Oklahoma is really good. They're really balanced. I think in a previous video, I probably mentioned that they have one of the best starting fives in the Big 12. Nothing has changed my mind in that. I just think this is going to be West Virginia's time at home. I'm going to take the Mountaineers in this one. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, my favorite coach of all time in college basket's Tark the Shark, Jerry Tarkanian. My second favorite coach, at least in the last 25 years, Lon Kruger. Doesn't matter where this guy goes. He just coaches his rear end off. I'm a huge fan. He was out here for a couple of years at UNLV. They let him get away over a few bucks. Oklahoma got the best end of that. But here's the deal for me with Oklahoma in this game. They're outstanding, fundamentally sound at both ends of the floor. However, they have one issue, and it's three-point defense. And you just talked about West Virginia this year being better at being able to shoot from the deep perimeter. They don't shoot that well from the 2, but they shoot really well. They're a dead-eye team from the three-point line. So I think that's going to match up in West Virginia's favor. And also, the Mountaineers, man, they're going to be all about getting off to a good start. They only lost that game in Norman by 4, but they were down 38-20 at the half. They had a horrible first half. They roared back. They tied the game up. And I remember with about 10 minutes to go in the game, it was tied. And I thought, boy, they're going to win this game coming from that far down. And they end up losing 75-71. I'm with you. I think West Virginia exacts revenge. I don't think they're going to give Oklahoma, spot them a 18 to 20 point first half lead. And I like the Mountaineers to get the job done here. That advantage, by the way, being able to shoot so well from area code 3 and Oklahoma not so hot defending the 3, it's going to make a difference here, I think, at West Virginia this weekend.
There you go. There's the 2 calls on West Virginia. All right, next up, Fox Network. Later in the day game, Villanova, Creighton out of the Big East. Go ahead, Scott. Creighton, I know it's a little bit close to your heart, so have at it.
Well, I never bet with my heart, thankfully. Last time I did that, I was like 10. It was probably a Creighton-DePaul game. Benoit Benjamin playing basketball for the Blue Jays back in the day. Nobody under 40 is going to relate to me at all anymore, Doug. I just blown him out of the water with Louis Lloyd and with Benoit Benjamin. But anyway, listen, Creighton was better last season. I grew up about 10-minute drive from the Creighton campus. That's where I was every home basketball night. the Civic in downtown Omaha, watching Creighton Blue Jay basketball, Missouri Valley basketball. Got to see Larry Bird perform with Indiana State in that championship season. So just outstanding, fundamentally sound basketball over the course of the years. They were better last year than they are this year, the Blue Jays, as far as I'm concerned. And remember, they finished like 7th or 8th in the top 25 at the end of last year. They had a real shot to get to the Elite Eight, maybe even one step further. 15-5 this year, so they're no chump change, obviously, but they have serious in-game lapses this season, and they're bad on the boards. They allow teams to get putbacks. They also allow opponents too many third chances at times when you're watching their games. And for such a sharp shooting team, Creighton, they're not a good free throw shooting team. They're pretty bad at the charity stripe. And when you get into big games that a lot of times are going to end up being down to the wire, potentially a game against a great team like Villanova, you got to be able to make your free throws, and they haven't done that this year. I make Villanova a 4.5-point neutral court favorite when they match up against Creighton. This one's in Omaha, and so do the math. If the number's decent enough, I might jump in. I doubt it. I think this is going to be a game that I watch. But if I get kind of a funny-looking line, I might jump in on the Blue Jays. The problem for me with Creighton in big games or going deep in the tournament this year, Zagorowski's not playing at the same level he did last year, Doug.
Yeah, when you look at these two teams, they both have, from a purist standpoint, they're fantastic to watch. Okay, I mean, move the ball expertly. I mean, you look at Villanova. I mean, literally almost every basket comes with an assist. Okay, with how they play. Then the other thing is now for anybody who hangs out at a bar, and if you're watching Villanova, and if you decide to ask the person next to you, well, hey, how about every time Villanova does a shot fake, we'll take a shot. I'll tell you what, you'll be curled up in the corner with 10 minutes to go in the first half. Okay, it's over. So that's their whole game. They're just so good at being able to draw players up, get them to commit fouls. Sure. They're lacking a big man, a consistent presence in the paint, and as is Creighton for that matter too. So that's kind of an even matchup. But what turns the game for me here, Scott, is the toughness of Villanova. Okay, I'm not saying Creighton's soft, but they're just not. I guess you could make the analogy of the Super Bowl almost to the Tampa Bay Kansas City thing. I mean, I think it's kind of the same thing here. Villanova kids are just tougher. They're grittier. And when it's crunch time in the last 2 minutes of the game, if this is close, I have the confidence. If Villanova, for example, is 2 or if the spot's around 2 either side, I think Villanova can pull it out. So yeah, I'm going to go that way with that. And on that, while we're talking about things that you should do or things you should look at getting $60 of free money at Doc Sports for picks. Okay, it's a perfect opportunity for you to jump in, get $60 of free picks. Again, the sign up process is very simple. It's very easy. All you got to do, go to the Docs page right there, find out, sign up, and you're good. Whether it be Scott's picks, whether it be Mine's picks, or any of the other 10 handicappers at Docs, it's your choice. Have at it. All right, Let's get to the final game that we're going to talk about, which is we're moving ahead to Sunday, our first Sunday discussion, which is going to be Michigan against Wisconsin. Now, Scott, before I let you go here, I just get your opinion. This is my opinion, and if you're from Michigan, you're probably not going to like to hear this. I think there's no question there was the COVID issue, okay, with the virus issue with Michigan. That's a done deal. But they committed to playing on Sunday, but they did not commit to playing Illinois first, which, let's face it, we saw it in football, Florida State more specifically. I think we could probably come up with a few examples in college basketball as well. I just got the feeling that Michigan just didn't want to play Illinois. And not that I would either, given how good they were and how that could impact them. But be that as it may, they're going to play Wisconsin this week. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, look at Michigan's top 10, both offensive and defensive adjusted efficiency, 7th in offense, 9th in defense. How does that compare for folks that don't follow that metric, which was one of my favorites? Well, Gonzaga is 2nd and 5th. Baylor is 3rd at both ends. That's how good Michigan has been this season. They are that good. They creamed Wisconsin by 23 points, 77-54 earlier this season, and they held Wisconsin to 29% shooting with 2 pointers. Wisconsin is going to have to figure that out for one thing. They can't shoot 30% and expect to win, especially against a team like Michigan. And UM's number one in the nation in holding teams to 40% two-point shooting. Nobody is as good as them on defense inside the arc. Wisconsin isn't a good shooting team anyway as far as their two-pointers are concerned. They do make their threes. They're a good three-point shooting team. And that could be a key here because when, Michigan's only been on the road 4 times this year, 4 true road games. And in 2 of those road games, at Maryland and at a bad Nebraska team, those 2 teams, the Terps and the Huskers, actually made a decent amount of three-pointers at home against Michigan. So Wisconsin's going to have to not completely fall in love with the trade, Doug, but they're going to have to make the three. They got to be shooting at least 38, 39%, I think, from the three-point line because they're not going to get any open looks inside the arc. I'm filibustering a little bit because I don't have a play yet on this game. I'm trying to find reasons to back the Badgers here because of the situation. And then I start looking at what Michigan does on defense, and I'm like, man, this is going to be tough. So, I hate to do that, but I'm going to throw it on your shoulders and see if you have a play on this game. I just don't have a play right now. I'm trying to find reasons to back the Badgers.
Yeah, here's what I'm thinking. And, everything you said about Michigan is true. The only thing is we haven't seen Michigan since January 22nd. Okay, that's a long time ago. And I'll give you the good recent example of this time of year. St. Louis had a similar break. Okay,
right.
Now they played fewer games than Michigan had to that point, but they had a similar break, and they came back and they lost their first 2 games. Now they were better than the teams that they beat. There just was no rhythm. There was no continuity to their play, and so I think that's Wisconsin's opportunity. It's never easy to win at the Kohl Center. This is not an elite Wisconsin team, and they have problems also with powerful centers, which Michigan has. I just don't know that Michigan's going to be all together, okay, as a unit in this game. So if the number's right, okay, I think Wisconsin has a potential to be a play here and pull a upset. And, let's face it, on Sundays, I don't know what it's been for, I can't even tell you how many years. There's always when you get some of these big games on Sundays, there always seems to be that upset on a Sunday that just you wouldn't even have thought about it, and it just pops up. And this could be one of those. So I'm gonna lean with the Badgers in this one. I'm gonna take a shot at it. So
I like what you're saying because that situation that I was talking about, and you brought it up again about Michigan not playing for a while, is that situation that makes you want to back the Badgers. So I'm glad to hear that you're leaning towards Wisconsin because if I do get involved with this game, that's where it'll be. I'm just trying to iron out a few wrinkles that concern me. That's all.
There you have it. Okay. Well, so there's 10 free thoughts on some games this upcoming week for college basketball. We're ready. We're trying to get you ready. Everything's good to go. So friends, hope you enjoyed the video. And thanks, by the way, for the one we did 2 weeks ago. A lot of views, very pleased, surprised actually how many views that we got. It was great. So hopefully we can just continue to give you what you want to hear and keep it going. So this is Doug Upstone. He's Scott Spreitzer for Doc Sports. Thanks a lot for watching. Look for us next week at the same time.